the end of the day, if Fundy's making me money, I'm super happy with that. Hey there, so I'm Sean Brown. I'm a high school senior photographer and educator, and I help photographers just like you create profitable businesses so that you can have more time, freedom, and flexibility to do more of what you want in life. So I'm a high school senior portrait photographer, and so I've been at this for now over a decade. So I think we're on year 11, and I'm starting to finally figure things out here and there.
So you sent a text. You sent a text with your sales and Fundy Designer recently. $8,800, $4,200, $6,100, $3,550, $3,800, $4,300, $5,100. So those are all individual sales that you made in Fundy Designer with albums and wall art. How did you do that?
Yeah, and that was just the recent one. So that's not including a couple six, a couple 7,000. And then since I sent that text, it's been another 14,000 between three clients in the last week and a half. So with senior portraits, I'm pretty happy with that. And it's literally, I sent you the text because it's really all Fundy. And it's everything that's driving sales sessions now. So usually, they're like, oh, we have to do this software and this software. And now we're just throwing their galleries into Fundy, doing a mock-up of an album, selling them an album, selling them wall art. And it's the biggest thing, and I can kind of get the objection from photographers where it's like, well, my clients don't want wall art, or we don't want to do this. And it's because we're not showing it in the right way. It's because we're not giving them the tools to see the vision that we have as photographers and what could be in their walls. And it's even like a client yesterday where we start the conversation, we're at the studio, we're showing them different wall art, and they're like, well, we don't really throw stuff up on the wall. And they're walking out with a 20 by 30 portrait for somebody who said they didn't want anything up on their walls, just because we're showing them what's possible through the wall art designer, through the album designer, those tools that are really critical to growing your business.
After the shoot, after you're out of Lightroom or your raw editor, and you bring the photos into Fundy Designer, what's your process as far as like what's designed and ready before you sit down with your client? And then when you sit down with your client, what is that process of showing them from slideshow or design? Where do you start? How do you bring them through that process?
Yeah, great question. So kind of the process from once you've done the edits, once everything's ready to be shown to your client. So we always do a slideshow. Now, I know you advise, you're like, put the album design, put the wall art. I don't personally do that. And one of the things that we do is it's very structured in terms of what happens next during the sales session and what happens first, what happens in the middle, what happens last. It's all based on these psychological principles of really how can you we really lean into the psychology, the primacy, and the recency effect. So what we're always doing is the very first thing is showing every single client pre-designed wall art. And one of the things that I think where photographers go wrong is we make the assumption that either they don't have space in their wall or that this isn't something we want. And especially in the last few years, I used to just say, oh, well, if they have great photos, we'll just show them the wall art and then they'll want to buy it. But they were having trouble visualizing. They were having trouble seeing what that actually looks like together, specifically from their session. And so pre-designed in for every single session, I usually do 4 to 5 rooms all in Fundy. And they're very specific. And the first 2 are 6 groupings. So groupings of 6 images, just because the more wall art you add, the bigger your sales. And the one is just kind of on a wall space. One's on one of the stairs, kind of the stairs that ascends, showing a couple of the different configurations for the types of spaces that we can put in their homes. And one of the things that I urge you to do is to make sure that at least one of those is, if you have a studio, having something that resembles that up on your wall so that they can see what that looks like in more of a home setting. The other 2 are are a little bit smaller groupings, like a 3 and a 4 grouping. And then one of the things, and I'll actually give credit to Matt Hodgman over at White House for this idea, we're now also incorporating one of those rooms as a pure objection buster of, well, we don't have space or we don't have wall space in the home. And you guys have in Fundy, there's a room that has a door and a window right next to it. It's like maybe about a 3 foot space in between. You probably know which one I'm talking about. And it's perfect because it literally is designed to bust that objection of, well, we don't have to design wide, we can go vertical. And that's been a huge kind of eye opener for clients, where we really can show you that it's not a matter of how big your walls are, but rather what spaces we can find in your home that it will work for. And then with that session too, at the very end of showing them all the products, we end the session by showing them one of our larger albums with all of their images. And for a typical senior gallery, we're showing about 70 images. And one of the really nice things is that with the starter albums, the smaller size albums, those only include a certain number of images in there. So it's either about a 30-page album, a 50-page album, and then the largest one comes with all 70 of their gallery. And so that makes the design very, very simple, where we say, we can do this album for you, and it will come with all your images. All you have to do is choose the cover. And so rather than dad sitting there and wasting another 30, 40 of his minutes, he's like, just get the album with all their images. And so what we've seen is by switching it to that route, we've actually seen an increase by about $500, $600 per session just by doing it that way, rather than, you know, pushing that largest album right at the end versus typically showing what one of those starter albums would look like. We're showing what their images would look best with rather than what we think the clients want.
And I think since you've been doing this for a decade, my feeling, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, is that clients more and more, they just want everything done for them so that they can just say yes or no or small changes, right? Versus the old school way where they would choose what images they want and then we would design something for them. We're kind of flipping it where everything's designed ahead of time and then they're just tweaking or saying yes.
And I think that makes the biggest difference too, to do it ahead of time also, since what we're doing is we're coming in and we kind of act as the authority in that manner, right? Where what we're doing is we're saying, here's what I think as the professional would look best for your finished products, for your session, for your designs. And then what we can do from there is to tweak it to make sure your favorite images are there. So actually that $8,800 sale, I think we changed one of the images that I had put in a 6 grouping for them. And that's probably the best track record. I don't think I've ever had it where I was like designed it perfectly and they're like, actually that looks just perfect, and we'll just swap one image for one that's a little bit of a closer up one. And that was the only tweak that they made for a 6 grouping. But it is kind of playing into that philosophy of they want it done for them, and lean into you as the authority in order to help them see that vision and tell them why it is that that's going to work the best for them. I think typically the people that are struggling at the beginning of like, what products do I offer? Or how do I even offer products? Typically it stems from saying, well, you know what, I don't know how to do this. Or I don't want to do this because it's going to take more time. And you have to ask yourself, is this actually going to take more time, or is shooting more sessions going to make you more money? And at the end of the day, we know that that's just not true. You only have so much time in the day, so why wouldn't you want to maximize everything? And so with even the senior genre, where a lot of people are like, well, they don't want stuff up on their wall, they don't want to create a shrine to their senior or something like that. Even these clients are buying wall art. And so what I typically recommend are having 3 categories of product. The first is what I would consider your specialty products, or your products that they can't get elsewhere. And these are things like, you know, wall art or acrylic blocks and that sort of thing. But we look into the categories that really actually drive revenue in a business, and coincidentally, they're called the revenue drivers, and what we would call like the products that they can't get elsewhere, right? So what is it that you can offer them that they can't just go to a Shutterfly and print? And those are typically things like albums, image boxes, right? And really we focus on albums for a lot of our clients, just because I love them, because they take me less time per client to work with, and they get all their images there. And so what I always recommend is having one set album that comes in a collection, right? And kind of building the expectation that they're going to walk away with an album at least in whatever collection they do, right? The next one is going to be in those revenue drivers. And typically, what I would recommend for having a sample is have some sort of album product that is like your top of the line, your premium album, right? For every session, the premium album that I offer is the acrylic album because it is feels the most premium, it looks the most premium, whether that's a metal cover. Do what works best for you. And then those revenue drivers are the wall art. And where I see photographers kind of stumble a little bit is that they have like one 16 by 24 and that's like their sample, right? So go big. So in the studio, the smallest that we have displayed is a 16 by 24, but it's in a 6 grouping. That's the smallest that we have displayed. And so what we're doing is we're building the expectation that what will work on their walls are larger sizes. They say, oh, well, we really like that one. And it goes perfect. That's a 24 by 36. So we really, really like this grouping. Great. That's, 20 by 30 with accent pieces, right? And so we're building the expectation that you are going to walk away with an album. You're going to walk away with wall art. And curating that product suite is really important. So 2 albums, a starter kind of line, so just kind of like a standard, leather bound or one with a photo cover, a premium album line, and then I would say at least 2 different mediums for print wall art. And so we do metals, acrylics, and framed, and that gives people an option, kind of see what works best in their home. So we're catering to different aesthetics that way to really make sure that it's not just, well, if we don't like the metals, then we're not selling wall art to them. We're giving them options that work best for those different aesthetics of somebody's home design or their vision.
Can you talk a bit about how you talk about printed product with your clients in terms of the legacy of print and how print creates legacy for your families, doing that emotional connection?
That legacy of print products is so important, right? And one of the ways that we really hammer that home is that when we're talking about the wall art and the albums, all those products that truly are what I would define as legacy products, the products that are going to be passed down from generation to generation, not just something that's going to sit on a desk, right? What we always do for every single sales session is to make sure that we're not focused on the features, but rather the benefits. And so what I would encourage you to do is when you're sitting down with your clients, really hammer home that point of why is it that you offer that product? What is going to be the benefit that when they have a piece of wall art up in their home, what is it that they're going to experience? And for the seniors, it's I often joke, I always add a little bit of humor into the sales session because I think that really it helps kind of put people at ease where they're like, oh my gosh, this is like a little bit of a tense the time I'm about to drop, several $1,000s, and making them laugh can go a long way. And so what I always do is I always say like the wall art is really what they're going to look at when their daughter's away from college, when they're not picking up the FaceTime calls, right? So that you remember what your daughter's going to look like, or your son. And then with the album, we're really emphasizing this is, I always joke, especially if they've had like previous seniors that didn't go through the process with me, joking around. So when was the last time you actually pulled out your digital files from so-and-so senior session? They're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where they are. Go. So that's exactly why we offer the albums, so that all of your images here are together, so that you do have those for generations to come, so that you are able to make sure that you don't, they're not just going to get lost on your old iPhone that fell into the lake last week while you were jet skiing or doing all your water activities, or that you lose it in a drawer. You're always going to remember where that album is, and being able to open that up, have all of your images together rather than them getting lost, in a moving shuffle. They're right there in the album. They're always going to be there, and you are going to have that forever. And so we're really kind of hammering home those benefits of that. 3 favorite features: wall art, because it makes me a lot of money; the auto design in the albums; and the new auto design wizard in V11 is pretty slick as well. That's pretty cool, where it does everything for you at the click of a button. So I would say those are the features that I use the most. At the end of the day, if Fundy's making me money, I'm super happy with that.